Welcome to the Butterfly Effect. I'm Chris Horner. This is stage 17 of the Tour de France. 130 kilometers today, about 80 miles in length. 4 categorized climbs on today's stage. And much like yesterday, they're going to come in the second half of the stage. Today's stage being really short means when we come into these climbs, a lot of riders have somewhat some power still left in the legs because it's going to be that flat section to begin with. And then once we start going up the climbs, we know it's going to explode. Most of these climbs are not quite on the monstrous sides in terms of when you compare them to 25, 30 kilometer long climbs. But when we look at that last climb at 8 kilometers, 8%, we know it's really steep. Once we go under the 2 kilometer banner with about 1.8 kilometers to go, that's when this final climb gets really hard all the way up to the airport. And we're talking about pitches of 14 and 15% all the way up to the finish line of today's stage 17. When the racing starts, we hear the bad news. It's Rafał Majka from UAE Team Emirates that won't start for his team today. That's because yesterday, because of the mechanical problem on the final climb, when his chain broke and he slipped the pedal and barely kept the bike upright, he tore something in his muscle in one of the legs. Won't be able to start today's stage. That leaves UAE Team Emirates down to 4 riders starting stage 17. And remember, Mark Hirschi, the Swiss rider, he's been walking dead since stage 1. Contracting COVID just after Tour of Suisse started, and he was a replacement here for Matteo Trentin, who had COVID originally, couldn't start the Tour de France. So Mark Hirschi has done some massive suffering, and today is not going to be any easier on the Swiss rider. When the racing starts, we got attacks going left and right. Jumbo-Visma got the same MO going as they have throughout the Tour de France. Only today, they're not going to get so lucky. They're following attacks with Christophe Laporte right from the word go. And we're going to see Jumbo-Visma represented in just about every attack or trying to make attacks, even with Thies Benoot, one of their ace climbers here, or except Kuss is their ace. Let's call him one of their secondary halfway climbers here on Jumbo-Visma. They're sending them up the road, even though they got numbers down themselves, because Primoz Roglic is not here and Steven Kruijswijk's not. Now, we've seen this play out many times in the Tour de France stage already, where it's worked out really good, but today they're not going to have that kind of effect. They are going to spend a ton of energy, though, following attacks, trying to make attacks, and getting up the road. Wout van Aert follows a couple of his own attacks right around 100 kilometers to go, and then he's going to take the green point sprint line and seal up the green jersey competition here at the Tour de France with these points on this stage 17. After that, he's going to take a break back to the car because he's got to get his radio fixed. It's full gas up front. I don't know what Wout van Aert's doing. Never one day in my career, and I raced pro for 25 years, and never one day during my career did I go back to the team car while it was full gas at the Tour de France and attacks happening left and right while wearing the race leader's green jersey while Van Aert's getting his radio adjusted back there. And let me remind you, in case you forgot, they have the race leader's yellow jersey with Jonas Vingegaard here on today's stage 17. Wout's got to have his radio working, though, because if the directors can't tell him what to do, he doesn't know what to do. So he's back there, he's getting it fixed, he'll get back up to the peloton, and still it's full gas. The next excitement to happen is going to be from the EF Education rider Bettiol, and I think it's Joe Dombrowski. We'll see 2 EF riders trying to attack off the front, and Joe Dombrowski wants to cover the move. Bettiol is going to take him all the way to the fence. He's going to drift hard to the left, and then he's going to hold up the Astana rider. Once they get back up to that front group of EF that didn't really go anywhere, there's going to be another argument between Joe Dombrowski and Bettiol. Bettiol is going to have a little bit of words with Joe Dombrowski, even though from my eyes, when I backed up the film, it looked like it was all Bettiol's fault. Now Bettiol and Joe Dombrowski with that argument, Joe Dombrowski is going to throw in an attack, but Bettiol is not going to let it happen. He's going to accelerate and push the Astana rider into the fence. Now we see they're not very happy, but that'll be the end of that because this race is full on right now. As we come up to the first categorized climb here at the Tour de France, 2 riders are going to slip off the front. Thibaut Pinot and Alexei Lusenko going up the road. These 2 riders, they want to get away from the peloton, and they got a little bit of a gap. There's going to be a big group back there that starts to form. We'll call it about a dozen riders with some DSM riders and a fluff of other riders mixed in there from the peloton. Nobody that's a general classification threat, though, is really here in this group of 12 or up the road, with Thibaut Pinot and Alexei Lusenko not being a threat on general classification. Behind, when we go back to the peloton, Thies Benoot from Jumbo-Visma is riding the front. Now, he covered at least 5, 6, 7 attacks at the beginning through the flat sections of this stage 17. He led into this climb full gas, trying to keep his race leader in perfect position to start the climb, and now he's riding the front. This guy has been on the front throughout this stage 17 of the Tour de France. He's drilling it hard, and we're starting to see the peloton reduce in size as guys are coming out the back, having a rough stage 17. One of the riders at the back, Mikhail Berg, for UAE Team Emirates. He's having a hard time, but he's hanging on the back for dear life because remember, at this point in time, Mark Hirschi's already gotten dropped from the group. That means UAE Team Emirates are down to 3 riders here, and Tadej Pogačar is the 2-time defending Tour de France champion here. Now he's second on general classification, but he's going to need the help of Mikhail Berg, who's swinging on the back while Thies Benoot's on the front drilling it. We'll see a little bit more action from the GC as it's Romain Bardet that from DSM that throws in attack. He's got his teammate on the front leading him out. His teammate will finish, and Romain Bardet will throw in his second attack to get away from all the GC favorites because he knows he's got some teammates up in that front group of about a dozen. We'll go over the summit with Thibaut Pinot, Alexei Lutsenko from Astana leading the way with a 30-second gap on that dozen behind. The peloton being led by Thies Benoot's not that much further behind. So we know when the first KOM finished here at the Tour de France, anything's possible. Break could still go up the road, or it could be a GC battle. Coming down this descent, Thies Benoot's keeping everything on control, and Laporte for Jumbo-Visma will find his way back up to the front to start the Category 2 climb. He won't be there too long because it's Mikhail Berg. Mikhail Berg, UAE Team Emirates, who was at the back suffering over this first KOM of the Tour de France. He's found his way back up to the front. Brandon McNulty's there, and Tadej Pogačar is near the front. Mikhail Berg's throwing down on the pedals, and we're going to see Ineos Adam Yates come out the back with Mikhail Berg, UAE Team Emirates tempo at the front. Adam Yates is having a bad day. I'll read later where he said he was sick here at stage 17, so the Ineos rider, he's not going to see the front of the group again. Mikhail Berg's up front. He's solidly throwing down 100%. Now the MO has to be clear right now. There's 3 climbs here. UAE Team Emirates only have 3 riders, so they're going to run Mikhail Berg for as long as they possibly can. Hopefully up and over this second KOM here on stage 17 down the descent and into the penultimate KOM because he's got to set up Brandon McNulty, who's got to set up Tadej Pogačar here on stage 17. Mikhail Berg does a fabulous job. He's reducing the peloton left and right, and everybody's starting to come out the back. Just as they're nearing the summit, Simon Geschke, the Cofidis KOM leader here on stage 17, he has a bike issue. Check out the fan giving him a good push here. This fan spectator, he gives him a solid push, and Geske's found his way back into the peloton. Now up front, Thibaut Pinot's going over the KOM with Alexei Lutsenko locked onto his wheel. Those two will drop down the descent, and Thibaut Pinot's having some problems in one of the corners. We see as he's setting up for this right-hand corner, he's starting the corner in the center of the road. Thibaut Pinot, you can't start in the center. You got to go all the way to the outside, hit the inside apex of the corner, and then you got room when you come out. Instead, when you look at the photos, you see him dead center. His leg comes out as he's in the center of the turn now because he's worried about making the turn. The FDJ rider puts his pedal back in, puts his foot back in the pedal, and then continues to accelerate up front to Alexei Lutsenko from Astana. Now things get a little bit interesting back there on the flat valley part here because we start to see the peloton coming back together with a lot of riders who were dropped over the second category climb here on stage 17. We see that with Jumbo-Visma, they got some riders, but it's more the Cofidis riders I want to point out to you at the front. Cofidis rider, he's pulling on the front, and you're asking yourself, what are you pulling on the front for? You're not Jumbo-Visma, you're not UAE team members. Cofidis is pulling on the front right now because with Simon Geschke that had a problem back there with the bike, he got back onto the group, and now they want to chase this front group of 12 and the 2 riders in front of them, Thibaut Pinot and Alexei Lutsenko, because they need KOM points for Simon Geschke here for Cofidis. Now we'll see Jumbo-Visma open up the gap, and they open up that gap because Mikhail Berg dropped off the front wheel of the Cofidis rider and is going back to the car to get some food for Tadej Pogačar and for Brandon McNulty, I would imagine, because we see him at the back. Now keep this in mind, because if we went all the way back to stage 11 when all those attacks were happening against Tadej Pogačar and he was isolated with no teammates, there was no one to go back there to the car. Now, because he's got 3 teammates still at this point in the race, he's able to send Mikhail Berg back there that can get water, food for his 2 race leaders here of UAE team members. Jumbo-Visma open up that gap to Kofidis rider up front. Gasking will jump across, and those 2 riders will try to bridge up to the group of 12 up front here on stage 17. Now when we start the 3rd category climb, it's Lexi Lusenko and Thibaut Pinot, and their gap is starting to shrink because that group of 12 is now starting to set a fast pace. DSM riders on the front, they're pulling back the 2 riders up front early on this 3rd category climb, and then they're going to launch Andreas Luknesen, who won a stage at Tour of Suisse just before the Tour de France started. The DSM riders accelerate, and Bardet can't hold the pace. Romain Bardet is coming out the back. Now DSM got a dilemma here because Romain Bardet, 9th on the general classification and about 6.5 minutes back on the GC. They're going to let him flounder because he can't hold the pace, and now they're thinking we got a shot at going for the stage win. Andreas Luknesen's going up the road solo, and his teammate behind on the general classification, Romain Bardet, is falling back. Now when the climb starts for the GC contenders, Mikhail Berg started this 3rd category climb here at the Tour de France, and he's drilling it 100%. Tom Pidcock's coming out the back. Christophe Laporte from Jumbo-Visma, the next big rider to get dropped here from the pace from Mikhail Berg, a front UAE team members. Let me remind you guys, he was at the back suffering on the 1st category climb. Now he's sending everyone else out the back from Jumbo-Visma. Next coming up, Wout van Aert. We see him over at the feeders. He's going to grab a feed bag, sit up, reach in and grab some food and hand it over to his race leader. Then we're going to see some switching at the front of the peloton because Mikhail Berg's done. Brandon McNulty takes over, and now there's some more riders coming out the back as Wout van Aert in green, he's getting dropped. We're going to start seeing the GC guys now coming out the back. FDJ's David Gaudu is coming out the back, and along with Gaudu is Enric Mas and Louis Menkes from Intermarché. He's having a fantastic Tour de France, but now with the pace from Brandon McNulty, he can't hold on. Next to come out the back, the big GC favorite, Nairo Quintana from Arkea Samsic, can't hold the pace. We look back up to the front group now. Brandon McNulty's got this to an elite group. He's got his team leader, Tadej Pogacar, Jonas Vingegaard in yellow, Sepp Kuss from Jumbo-Visma's there, and when we look back, Geraint Thomas from Ineos, he's holding on. Brandon McNulty's accelerating hard. Nothing can slow this kid down. He is motivated here at stage 17 on the 3rd category climb. Now as we get further up the climb, the next rider to come off, it's Sepp Kuss. It's too hot for him. He needs a water bottle to cool himself off as he drops off the pace and can't hold up to Brandon McNulty's speed here on the 3rd category climb. They'll go just a little bit further, and Geraint Thomas, Team Ineos, he's a 2018 Tour de France winner, and he can't hold the pace from Brandon McNulty, the American rider, leading out his teammate Pogacar. Now we got Jonas Vingegaard in yellow. He's locked on, but there's only 3 guys up front because as they were coming up, they caught Andreas Luknesen the same time Geraint Thomas was coming out. That means we got a full-blown GC battle here on stage 17. We got the stage win up for grabs, and of course we got the yellow jersey up for grabs if Tadej Pogacar can dislodge him. We get about 200 meters from the summit. Brandon McNulty still pulling hard. This is when we're going to see the first attack from Tadej Pogacar. He throws in a vicious acceleration. Jonas Vingegaard can still handle the speed though. They come over the KOM, flying through the left bend, full gas, and they'll drop down the descent where Tadej Pogacar is hoping to dislodge the race leader's yellow jersey. He can't, and wise move here from Tadej Pogacar. I love the attack going up with 200 meters because if you can get a gap, remember the speed with Brandon McNulty on the front was incredible and going warp speed on this 3rd category climb here at the Tour de France. So anything's possible with 200 meters to go. Tadej Pogacar couldn't drop him, and then he set up. Wise move. He's going to sit up. Brandon McNulty's going to come to the front. Brandon McNulty's going to drill it down the descent. Has a little bit of a scare at about 16 kilometers to go going in this right turn as he loses the bike just a little bit, gets it back under control. Jonas Vingegaard, he slots through on the inside, making sure he's safe, but he's bombing through that corner. Brandon McNulty will save it, no problem. He'll get back on the front and he'll start drilling. Now behind Geraint Thomas, Ineos. He knows at this point in time that he's not going to catch these 2 riders up front. He's not pushing 100% on the pedals going down this descent. So he'll start getting caught by DSM behind. DSM Roman Bardet had some help throughout this descent because he had teammates spread all over this course. When remember, it was Lucknesson that was the last rider to get caught. So with Andreas Lucknesson and Roman Bardet, they're capable of setting some pace as soon as they catch Geraint Thomas, and they go straight to the front for DSM. Andreas Lucknesson is doing a solid job, but they're about a minute behind the front three riders being led by Brandon McNulty. Pogacar locked on his wheel, and Jonas Vingegaard wondering, what's going to happen here? All my teammates have dropped. I better stay on Tadej Pogacar's wheel. With 8 kilometers to go, this is the final and last climb of stage 17, but it is steep, especially when we're talking the finish. Brandon McNulty's setting a vicious pace. He gets all the way up to 4 kilometers to go. He's still on the pedals. 3 kilometers to go. He's still on the front, leading these two groups of the best riders in the world, first and second of the Tour de France. Brandon McNulty's doing a solid job with about 2 kilometers to go. You look at the speed on the lower right corner of your screen. He's doing 30 kilometers an hour while going uphill. Now, right after that 2 kilometer and that 30 kilometer speed, the road's going to go up. And we're talking about 12, 13, 14, 15% pitches with just under 1.5 kilometers to go. Pogacar, he's going to rotate off of Brandon McNulty's wheel, and he's going to force the yellow jersey of the Tour de France to slot into second position. Jonas Vingegaard knows he has no option right here. If he still wants a chance at winning stage 17, could have always set up and let Brandon McNulty go, but that wouldn't have been wise, so Jonas slots up in the second place, and Tadej Pogacar slots in the third. Now he can keep an eye on the race leader's yellow jersey here at the Tour de France when we come into the finish. About 600 meters to go, we're going to see Tadej Pogacar get on the radio. He's got to be saying something to Brandon McNulty. Brandon McNulty's still on the front. I don't know how this kid's doing it, but he is riding fantastic. Been on the front for about 20 miles to go at the finish here of stage 17 of the Tour de France, and he's still pushing hard. Then with 300 meters to go, Tadej Pogacar throws in his first acceleration, goes all the way over right against the fencing. He's out of the saddle. He's sprinting like crazy. Jonas Vingegaard in the yellow jersey, and the glorious yellow jersey still locked on his wheel. He'll sit up with 200 meters to go, and then about 150 meters to go, the race leader's yellow jersey throws in his own attack. He goes from the right side of the road to the left. Tadej Pogacar does the same and follows right behind the race leaders of the Tour de France. Then with 100 meters to go, Tadej Pogacar throws in his second attack here at the finish of stage 17. 75 meters to go, they're even for the line, and then just 10-15 meters after that, Tadej Pogacar's got the lead on the race leader, Jonas Vingegaard. He takes it all the way to the line, sits up, and does a big victory salute behind in the race leader's yellow jersey. Jonas, his head drops down from the exhaustion used on today's stage. Tadej Pogacar, though, he wasn't coming across the line just smelling and looking like roses. This was a victory salute, but you look at his face, I haven't seen him suffering this much on any of his victories in the past, so you know he was pushed to the limit here on stage 17. Another mammoth stage here at the Tour de France. Now Brandon McNulty, the MVP, the most combative rider here at the Tour de France on stage 17, he'll cross the line to round out the podium of the Tour de France, and then when we go further back, it's going to be Geraint Thomas. He's going to lose about 2 minutes on today's stage. Nairo Quintana is going to come down on time. FDJ's Gadou's going to come down on time, and there's going to be a bit of shuffle on the top 10 of the general classification. So make sure you look up the results and see how much the race had changed when we're talking about outside at first, second, and third on the general classification, because Geraint Thomas held his podium, but like I said, gave up some time. Looking forward to tomorrow's stage, I gotta believe we're going to expect a lot of the same here at the Tour de France. So make sure you guys like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next edition of The Butterfly Effect.